Let us pray. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his love endures forever. For the Governor General's annual I Believe Youth Consultative Conference 2021, we give you thanks, O God, and ask you to be with us, to lead and direct. Bless our Governor General, Sir Patrick, and the organizers, the donors, and all who will participate in this conference. As this conference focuses on building a resilient path to recovery with and for our Jamaican youths, the roles, rights, and priorities of young people in the COVID-19 recovery efforts. We ask for your divine intervention as we face the challenges and seek solutions. Grant us wisdom, O God. All this we ask through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. God is good all the time, all the time. God is good. Thank you so very much. That was the Honorable Dr. Patricia Dunwell, Custos Rotolorum for the parish of St. Andrew, who so ably blessed the proceedings. Quite a fantastic way to get things started. If you are just joining us again, welcome to the Governor General's I Believe Initiative Youth Consultative Conference 2021 in partnership with the United Nations office here in Jamaica. The theme, building a resilient path to recovery with and for Jamaica's youth. Now, I understand that some of you might be watching or viewing via YouTube, the GGP page, maybe the United Nations Jamaica page. Some of you are coming in directly via Zoom, or maybe you registered via the website. Whoever it is you are watching, thank you so very much for joining us. Go ahead, drop your flags, let us know what parish, what town, what district you might be representing. And if by any chance you might be a young person, a youngster, or youth who is outside of Jamaica, go ahead and let us know where you are watching from. Now, I did mention that some of you might be watching via social media platforms or Zoom links, but if you want to truly get the full VFairs interactive experience, I would encourage you to go register. It's very quick, very simple at 2021ycc.com. There are prizes, surprises, scavenger hunts, and a beautiful virtual exhibitor hall all there for you. So again, it's very quick. Go and register 2021ycc.com. Now, YCC, why is it important and how is it different from other conferences? Well, the youth, in my opinion, they're not the future. They're actually the present and they are the now. You are the present and the now. You have dreams, goals, fears, and challenges. And the YCC creates a space that allows you to ask your questions, exchange ideas, milk the presenters, the facilitators, and the consultants for all their worth. Because we cannot guide and help you to develop personally or professionally without having you at the table. So again, the YCC welcomes you. Get your pens, get your notepads, and don't be afraid to be bold and ask the questions that you really want to ask. Now, the perfect person who is really apt to explain, welcome the opening remarks and to also explain what this YCC is all about in overview is Mr. Abraham D. Simmons, National Coordinator, the GGP. Please welcome him to the virtual stage.
Thank you very much, Terry. I must express how thankful I am to all of you who are joining us online and the few we have here in person today. I am grateful for the support of all our IBI ambassadors and major sponsors who have made this year's Youth Consultative Conference quite possible. Today, we are joined by His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, the Governor General of Jamaica and patron of the Governor General's Program for Excellence. Dr. Garrick O'Neill, Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in Jamaica, will also join us today. We're not able to host the conference in 2020 last year, but the critical support of the United Nations in Jamaica and our major support from the sponsors we have, we're able to stage this one. This year's conference will span 2 days, today and tomorrow, and we will feature presentations, workshops, edutainment, and lots of giveaways. The content delivered across the 2 days, the content is delivered across the 2 days to help to reduce screen fatigue and to boost information retention. From your screens at home, you will also get to, as Terry said, experience our virtual village that is an online simulation of our conference venue. If you missed a session, you don't have to worry at all because we will be able to access recordings and workshop materials by visiting 2021ycc.com. Just use the email you used to register for the conference. As young people, there are many challenges that we face as we mature into young adults, but an added layer of challenges are created when we lack immediate access to quality services. Oftentimes, in many parts of the world, youth voices are not included in the design and rollout of laws and policies that ultimately impact on young people. The YCC was introduced more than 10 years ago to provide opportunities for young people to share on matters that affect them the most. This year's conference promises to be engaging and insightful as we leverage technology to reach all of you from your classrooms or at home. I would like to thank the honorable custodies. They are the Governor General's representatives within your parishes for their support and guidance as we work together for the execution of this event. One thing that is true about the YCC is that a lot of work goes into scaling our reach, ensuring that young people everywhere can tap into the discussions. As part of our opening ceremony, you will be involved in an engaging plenary that features remarks from the Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, State Minister within the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and our colleagues from 2 major youth-led bodies. I must also take this opportunity to recognize in a very special way our partnership with the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office. We have been meeting for weeks and have received extensive technical assistance for what will undoubtedly be an amazing event. There is so much in store, and I hope to learn what the young people's concerns are in the form of a call to action that will be released at the end of the conference. Over 1,000 persons have registered for the YCC, and we know you are eager to benefit from our lineup of presentations and workshops. Please use this platform to channel your voices as we work together towards the type of recovery that sets us back on track to achieving to becoming a leader in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and our Vision 2030 agenda. When young people work together, amazing things can happen. Remember to send us your question using the hashtag YCC21. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Abraham D. Simmons, for giving us the welcome, the opening remarks, and giving us a fantastic overview. I thought it resonated when he said, your voices matter. We're not trying to leave anyone behind, and scaling the reach to ensure that as many youngsters as possible get access to this conference, and the insights, the key insights from our presenters was actually paramount. I do want to break and acknowledge Tony Aiken, who is here, our sign language, our interpreter, and we want to acknowledge the fact that this is an inclusive experience, and so we acknowledge the members of the hearing impaired as well as the deaf community. Welcome, good morning. It is so good to have you. Now, we're speaking about reach and we spoke about partnership, and we welcomed you because we are in partnership with the United Nations of Jamaica. Getting the reach, having the impact that we want to create would not be possible without meaningful partnerships. At this time, we welcome Dr. or Mr. Gary Conneal, a United Nations resident and representative. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for this remarkable introduction. Jamaican youth, on behalf of the United Nations Secretary General and the entire family of UN agencies, funds, and programs operating in Jamaica, I extend warm greetings to you all. Welcome again to the 2021 Virtual Youth Consultative Conference. Today, it's all about Jamaica's youth and the power of young people. Over 46% of Jamaica's population are youth. It therefore means that young people are truly the heart of this nation and the engine that keeps the vehicle of Jamaica moving forward. It is critical, therefore, that all leaders listen and consult with young people, and that we become intimately in tune with what young people need to thrive. It is also important that we maximize the opportunities to have young people in the driver's seat of their own development. That is why the United Nations is happy to partner with the GGPE. For over a decade, the program has facilitated forums for young people's voices to be heard and for their perspectives to be funneled to duty bearers and policymakers. All this while empowering young Jamaicans to empower themselves and stimulate change within their own local communities. Now, the UN in Jamaica has made a commitment to increase sustainable partnerships with youth-led and youth-focused organizations. This can only be assured through systematic dialogues with youth, such as we will have today and tomorrow. The COVID-19 Build Back Better agenda is a recovery roadmap that actually demands youth involvement. This YCC is but one opportunity to spark involvement. We must ambitiously seek to create more. And despite the challenges of COVID and not being able to convene this event in 2020, I am so very proud that we have been able to support the staging of the 2021 conference in a virtual format that will engage youth in all their diversity, including young people from rural Jamaica, youth living with disabilities, and others too often left behind. A welcome feature of this event is the active engagement of government leaders alongside youth leaders. Now, this is an occurrence not seen often enough, where young people can have meaningful audiences with their leaders. We have extended invitations to the wider UN community in the region, highlighting this experience as a burgeoning best practice for meaningful youth engagement. Now, the UN has committed its convening responsibility to support strategic dissemination of the reports and consultative feedback to local and international stakeholders and development partners. This will ensure that the messages and results of the conference are amplified. We will play our part in giving wind to youth voices. Working with UNESCO, UNICEF, UNDP, and others, we hope to continue scaling up efforts for meaningful youth engagement in Jamaica. This year, the UN system finalizes the new multi-country sustainable framework for the region. Now, this is the business plan that basically defines how the UN operates in the different countries it's here to serve. Throughout the process, young people have consistently been engaged in a series of multi-stakeholder consultations, and their contributions have been remarkable. What is also remarkable is how consistent youth contribution to the global public agenda has been. Better climate policies and investments, equal opportunity, diversification, digitalization, and so forth and so on. In the decade of action, youth action is needed for accelerating the achievement of Jamaica's Vision 2030, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals. On day 2 of the YCC, we will have the pleasure of hearing from the Secretary General's Special Envoy on Youth, Ms. Hayatma. She is a youth champion of the SDGs and the UN's youth strategy leader. And I hope you will be inspired by her journey and her call to action. We welcome your participation over these 2 days. The challenge of the past year have been very real, and many of our collective priorities for the climate, for education, in gender equality, for decent work, and for peace may appear to have been derailed. But we are still in the game. Continue to call for national and global ambition, and I urge you to never be daunted in holding your leaders accountable. I urge Jamaicans' young people, I really urge Jamaica's young people and youth to continue to engage and champion your cause through this conference and all available channels. And should channels seem to fail, like WhatsApp and Facebook did this week, I challenge you to innovate and create new microphones and networks of your own. Let your voices be heard. Jamaican youth, you have the full backing and support of the United Nations system. To borrow a 16th century political slogan, nothing about us without us. In other words, no policy or program should be decided without the full and direct participation of members of the group affected by that policy. As such, we are here to ensure that you are not mere beneficiaries of the future you want, but you are also active architects in its development. Thank you, and may you have an informative, engaging, and productive conference. And as some of my younger colleagues working with me in the UN would say, this agenda, it have buzz. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Gary Conneal, UN Resident Coordinator, saying there that this agenda have a buzz. Thank you for your support, your commitment, your dedication, as well as shared vision where this is concerned. He's reminding you, the youth, you are the engine, you are the drivers, you are the consultants, and therefore we look forward to hearing more from you. Now, I believe that there is nothing wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed by using what is right with Jamaica. These were profound words that were delivered by our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, Governor General.
I am pleased to join you for the 2021 Youth Consultative Conference being held virtually for the first time. Since the launch of the I Believe initiative in 2011, the Youth Consultative Conference has been a platform for meaningful youth engagement and remain an important activity on its annual calendar of events. A core feature of the conference is youth consultation. Since 2011, the YCC has enabled dialogue with young people on the most pressing issues affecting our nation. As the program evolved, we introduced thought leaders who often provided keynote presentations on a range of matters, including substance abuse, human trafficking, mental health, and unemployment. This year, as we maneuver the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are addressing the priorities of young people as we move closer to a sense of recovery. Hence the theme, building a resilient path with and for Jamaica's youth. Our recovery is most certainly a partnership and will require not only youth perspectives, but collective action from every member of our society. One thing this experience has taught us is how important it is to have community-led cooperation. My heart is with every Jamaican as we seek to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. But my heart is saddened every time I see the news and I see the escalating crime and violence epidemic that has rocked Jamaica for some time now, and at a time when we should be working together. It is heartbreaking to think of the thousands of Jamaicans who have lost their lives at the hands of gun users. When you ask the young people what they think are the root causes, they tell you that it is a lack of resources, and crime is the outcome of the fight to survive. Many musicians and prophets have been singing and talking about this problem. And as the years go by, there's only a new voice to the same message. When will we recognize that we are what is right with Jamaica? Listen to the words of the late reggae icon, Peter Tosh, in his song, Fools Die. And I quote, "The lips of the righteous teaches many, but fools die for want of wisdom. Vexation of the soul is vanity. Destruction of the poor is their poverty. Why do we fight each other? Why do you kill your brother? Then your reward will be in the cemetery. We got to build a better nation. Clean up Jack creation, or there will be no future for you and me." End of quote. Unless we take a stand in solidarity, we will continue to lose our talented young people to migration or to the cemetery. There will be no future. There will be no actualization of our development goals. So let us begin to make the change. I hope that each of you, wherever you are, will recognize that you're an equal and important stakeholder in our country's development. I hope that this year's YCC will act as an avenue for you to express your concerns so that they may be included in all plans to build back stronger. I take this opportunity also to express my sincere thanks to this year's sponsors of the YCC, the United Nations in Jamaica, the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, Kingston Bookshop, First Regional Cooperative Credit Union, Nestle, National Integrity Action, and Spice World. Thanks for your commitment to our young people as we chart a resilient path into the future. God bless you and have a great day.
Thank you so very much. His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, Governor General, reminding you, the youth, that we honor you, we respect you, and we need you, most importantly. And as we speak of recovery as well as resilience, we are reminded that this is a partnership. Therefore, you are called to the table. And he also reminds us that it is important for your voices to be heard and for you to be included in all programs and policies that have to do with you. This is what the YCC is all about. Now, we mentioned earlier on that it is the Governor General's I Believe initiative. And for those of you who've never heard about it, there is an I Believe song. Watch this. The I Believe song, absolutely beautiful, timely, and relevant, reminding us that yes, it's great to believe all of these things because what you believe, you can potentially manifest. So we are closing off the official opening ceremony, and now we get into the meat of the matter. We have panel discussions coming up, we have workshops and other sessions that we know that you are going to enjoy. But before I do, I have a very special facilitator who is going to take over for the panel discussion, and that one is going to be extremely interesting. The classroom, are we leaving anyone behind? Now, this facilitator, my co-host, needs absolutely no introduction, but just in case you are not familiar with him, please allow me to introduce him. Roshane Campbell, more popularly known as Rush Cam, is a practiced attorney at law who graduated from the West Indies, the University of the West Indies, and Norman Manley Law School at the top of his class. But he was drawn towards a more creative calling in the pursuit of a purpose-driven life, and we're very happy that he did. This attorney turned content creator has managed to pack motivational, lifestyle, socio-political, and spiritual content into an authentic, memorable experience with his online community, the Rush Fam. If I can tell you anything, he's going to be honest, he's going to be open, he's going to be transparent. Ladies and gentlemen, to our youth, please put your hands together as we welcome Roshane Rushcam Campbell.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Reed, I've always wanted to call Terry Dr. Reed. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Such an amazing job, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in so far. If you're just joining us, you are watching, you are here at the I Believe National Youth Consultative, say it with me, Consultative Conference. I am Rush Cam, as Terry said, and I will be facilitating a panel that is very important because, as His Excellency said, as the UN facilitator said, as we've been saying from the beginning of this entire event, it is about you, and we want to hear what you have to say as youth. And so we're encouraging you, we're reminding you, we're imploring, we're asking you, please, send in your questions, send in your concerns, say what you want to say, of course, in a proper professional way, young people, please, and use the hashtag YCC21. And also you can type in the Zoom chat, you can type in the YouTube chat as well. And we have persons all over looking out to hear what you have to say. So we've set the foundation and we've heard from His Excellency, we've heard from the United Nations, and now we want to hear from some of our stakeholders as we sort of broaden the conversation and provide a sort of framework for us to have deeper discussions as we go into the second half of our program, which is the breakout sessions and so on. So I have a panel. I've said it over and over again, and this panel have a buzz. And so I would like to introduce the first member of my panel, who is no stranger to us here and is no stranger to public service. He is, I'm trying to build some suspense here, guys. The Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. He's no stranger to communications and public service. He was formerly a senator as well as parliamentary secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. He was also Director of Communications at the Office of the Prime Minister and is a man who is passionate about public service and wanting to provide that channel of communication between the members of the public and the government and hearing what we have to say. Young people, we want to remind you that your voice is important. And so you would not normally get to book up the Honorable Minister in the streets. And so we want you to write your questions and use the hashtag so that you can have audience with the Honorable Minister. He's also a former student of the CC, one of the CCs. I went to the main CC, people, which is Campion College. But hey, Terry. But the Honorable Minister went to Clarendon College, Garvey Macio. He has an LLB and is a man of substance. So it's time to hear from the Minister. Minister, how are you doing?
Morning, Rush, how are you?
I'm all right. You never tell me how you're doing.
I'm well, man. I'm well.
You're well?
Actually very happy to be here. It's a wonderful thing that the Governor General has initiated and pioneered for the last 10 years. It's not often that persons of his elevation
Yes.
dedicate so much of their time and their energy to the promotion of youth issues. And I think that's something that we must recognize him for and ask him to continue.
Ask him to continue. Yes, thank you. And the GGPE is, I noticed that in the last 2 years, they've been doing an excellent job with sort of providing that platform for young people. And I was reading an article from UNICEF that says, in an emergency, the youth are always most vulnerable, but often we don't have evidence to show the full extent to which they are affected. And so as State Minister of Youth Education and Information, I'd love if you could, for our viewers, provide the framework for us about what is happening, the status quo, set the stage as we have our discussion.
So we have to speak truths here, and some of them they're still facts.
Yes.
The truth is an offense, but it's not a sin. So Jamaica's education system evolved out of a very challenging circumstance where the majority of Jamaicans at the time, who were mostly poor former descendants of slaves, were not being educated, and various governments over the years built schools, created teachers' colleges, a lot of churches participated, a lot of trust schools, the Catholic Church,
yes,
which was responsible for Campion College.
Yes.
The United Church was responsible for Garvey. So we have a potpourri of different types of institutions. But as we have evolved as a society, I don't think that our education system has kept pace with the evolution that is needed to have it sink into what the modern aspiration of the Jamaican is.
I am very, very, very surprised and pleasantly surprised that you have said that.
But it's true.
It is true.
There are schools in my constituency that don't have internet. There are schools in my constituency that don't have water.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm laying the context as to what it is that we need to do and what we have been trying to do at the Ministry of Education in order to create a platform for the next generation of young Jamaicans to be as successful as possible. So yes, we have given out 134,000 tablets. Yes, we have brought more water to schools, not just this government, but other governments. But I think that young people and the country as a whole need to recognize that the best resource that we have as a society is our people.
Absolutely.
And the best fertilizer you have to grow them is education. And that's what we are trying to do. That's what I get up every day and try to do, to recognize that we continue to fail to educate the vast majority of our population, then the growth that Dr. Nigel Clark is pushing and the employees that the manufacturers and the BPOs and the banks and all of these places want, they're not going to be as available as they should be. Yes. So our mission is not to sit down and pretend that things are beautiful and cherry. COVID has exposed everything.
Yeah.
Yes. So our mission is to use COVID as an impetus, a turning point in creating an empowered, digitally aware, competent, qualified generation of Jamaicans for the next 50 years.
Yes, thank you. I have a follow-up question. What has been the biggest challenge during COVID for the ministry? Because we talk about education and we talk about technology and we kind of hold them hand in hand, but we've never really gotten into like the deep dive of what are the real issues. Because access to tablets is one thing, but what if the students don't have internet, for example? School is a more structured setting. What about the students who don't have lunch at home? So I'd love to know from the ministry's point of view, like what's been the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is the disconnection. And when I say disconnection, I'm not specifically referring to disconnection from the internet or electricity. Technology. But it's the disconnection of children from the formal education system that we have practiced for hundreds of years. Face-to-face education is the most effective means of transmitting knowledge from one person to another. And within a month, you told 600,000 kids in Jamaica and their parents, that you can no longer go to school. You have to go on a tablet. When we used to tell my son that you are only allowed 2 hours on the tablet, and now I see my son on the tablet for 5 hours. So the disconnection, and what the disconnection does is that it changes the socio-cultural dynamic within the society. So previously, children used to go to school and they used to interact with other children. They used to interact with teachers. They used to form relationships. They used to go on the playground. They used to get licked down.
All of those things are connected to school.
All of those things contribute to the development of stable young people who can deal with conflicts and understand interpersonal relationships. Most of our children, in many cases, have been stuck in their living room for many months, and their only interaction with their friends is on tablets. So while the technology disconnection and the lack of tablets and the lack of electricity and the lack of all of these things is immensely important, I think the psychological damage that COVID has done to our children is something that we at the Ministry of Education have been looking at very seriously, which is why we have started this thing called the Yard-to-Yard Child Finding a Child Initiative, where we're engaging a couple hundred people to go into every community in Jamaica to identify the children that are not connected to the education system, find out why they're not connected, and see how we can connect them. Because the psychological damage is something that is going to be with us for a very long time if we do not intervene.
Wow. And in 2021, and 2020, we've been exposed to all the damage that comes from the ignoring or pushing under the rug mental health. And so it's really interesting to see that as the angle, because truly, the education framework, if we look at education as, book and pencil, it can happen anywhere, anytime, and so on. But the education system is more sociological, social. It teaches you how to do all these different things. And so I'm very happy that you have the Yard-to-Yard initiative, and I'm looking forward to hearing what happens as we progress. Minister, in the vein of honesty, I want to ask you. We had prepared to hear some opening remarks from you. You still want to do it, or you want to talk with me? Tell me.
I mean, the opening remarks are not really necessary. I mean, we can continue having a conversation.
A minister who is flexible and just goes with the flow and cares about the conversation at hand. I'm impressed.
I mean, the reality is that I don't stand on ceremony that much.
Neither me.
That's not how I was brought up.
No, for sure. And we're really encouraging you guys watching out there. Use the hashtag YCC21. You have audience with the minister. The minister is being honest. He's being open, and we're hearing all the initiatives that they have in place. 130,000 tablets being disseminated across the island. And so let us hear what you have to say as we bring the conversation forward. Now, we want to kind of broaden and bring in some more stakeholders so that we can kind of diversify the conversation a little bit. We have with us Danielle Jordan Bailey, National Secondary Students Council representative.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Danielle, which school do you go to?
St. Hugh's.
Ooh, St. Hugh's. If you're from St. Hugh's, then look on the blue and yellow cushion them, you know. If you're from St. Hugh's, put it down in the chat, say big up St. Hugh's, big up Danielle. And the Students' Council, when I was in high school 10 years ago, was very important because that is where we funnel the conversation.
Most definitely.
You know, it happens from student to school body, and that is principal, then from principal to the regional level, and then it eventually gets to the ministry.
Yes.
So thank you for being here, Danielle.
To be here.
Danielle, which form are you in?
I'm going into lower 6, so grade 12.
You're going into, so you did CSEC?
Yes, I did.
During the
pandemic.
the Panera bread?
Yes, essentially.
The Panasonic?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yes.
And we also have with us Christina Williams, representative from the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students.
Yes, thank you so much for
Okay.
having me, Rush.
I used to see with the Afro, but no,
Yes.
you do a little Empress vibe.
Yes,
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here, sitting beside the minister. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Come on now. What do you study? Where are you now? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm currently studying law at the University of the West Indies, Mona. So yes, Rush, we have relationship on
He
that
has an
regard.
LLB as well. The minister has an LLB.
I
Yes.
did not know that.
LLB squad.
All
Yes.
right. So that's what I'm currently doing. And of course, also involved in social impact work through JUTS and other agencies and organizations.
Excellent. Now, I have honest question to ask you. What's been the biggest challenge for you as Christina? Not talking about tertiary students, Christina, what's been your biggest challenge since the pandemic with education?
My biggest challenge as an individual, as a tertiary student, has really been balance. So I thought that because I was now online, it means I could take on the world. But then I realized how quickly I was feeling burnt out, whether as a student or being involved with a job or extracurricular activities. And then I said to myself, even though I had this support behind me, can just imagine all those other students at home who didn't have half the support that I do. So yes, although this is my challenge as a student, it does inform me as president of JUTS because I'm trying to navigate my struggle with the similar struggles of other students across the length and breadth of Jamaica.
Wow, wow, wow. Now, when we think about tertiary students versus like a primary school or a high school, tertiary has always been, when you go to university, you know, say free like a bird in the sky. You know, nobody now bother you, you that individual learning, independent, boom, bam, bam.
Read for your degree.
Read for your degree, read. Kingston Bookshop, thank you for sponsoring. But when you take that now and layer it with an online platform in the middle of a pandemic, internet issues, teachers who just learning how to use the internet.
Blackboard, right?
Blackboard, come on now. What do you notice in your classes? What do you notice with your classmates, especially law, for example, where you have to visit the library and all of those things? How has that affected you?
Well, there is a knowledge gap happening right now in our schools. Minister, I know you know this. And it is widening as we speak. And I am terrified because we have the Sustainable Development Goals right here, and we talk about Vision 2030, but that is at risk. It's being compromised as we speak because aside from our students feeling disengaged, they're on the platform, but they're not really connected to the material. There's also the matter of you've missed classes and there's no real accountability there, particularly in the tertiary institutions. So while we have this yard program that the ministry has for secondary and possibly primary school students, at the tertiary level, there's no such yard program. If you're missing from classes, no one cares.
That is it.
That is it. So you have students, tertiary students specifically, that are falling behind by months. And there are students who, even while they're attending classes, still don't get it. Because I want to say this for those who are watching now, are probably administrators from tertiary institutions. The curricula that you have is not meant for online learning.
Yes.
Remote learning and online learning are not the same thing. And we continue to conflate it into
say that again. Come now.
remote learning and online learning, they're not the same concepts. And so what we currently have as curriculum, our curricula in our institutions, need to be revised. While it is that we're waiting on the inoculation to go up and for students to resume face-to-face, until we have that, which I very much am supporting. I mean, Minister and I, we just did a campaign 2 weeks ago to talk about students getting vaccinated. Until we have the percentage that we want, we need to start talking about this real conversation. We don't have face-to-face learning. How can we still ensure engagement in a meaningful way through the revision of the curriculum?
All right, let me bring in the minister here to sort of ask this question, because the ministry's primary concern and obligation would be to primary and high school students. Children, they're under 18. We have adults who are in the education system through university and so on. How do we, or how does the government step in to ensure that through the university, we're sort of bridging the gap, and also that we're graduating students who are teachable, employable, because through you have the degree, that means they can, we know that, and that are ready for the workforce and the working world. How can we bridge that gap as the government?
And I think it's important that we head up to this here, because one of the things that I've tried to do as a minister is to boost engagement between the ministry and the youth representatives. Because I think that historically, there's been a lot of talk about the voice of youth, and the youth voice is important.
Yes.
But they're not at the table.
Oh,
And you cannot eat if you're not at the table.
absolutely.
Right. So I'm very happy that she's here, and ideas like the one that she just posited are very important. And it's something that we cannot think about everything. So the distinction between remote learning and online learning is something that I never really even contemplated in myself, right? Intellectually, it makes sense, and you could have rationalized it, but you never thought about it. So it's important that we have engagements to get ideas like the one that we just got, so we can take it back to the center and say to them, listen, UA, UTech, we've had meetings with UTech over the past couple of weeks. We've raised a lot of the issues that the young people have raised, issues such as inability to reach anybody to have a conversation, issues such as the whole challenging paying your fees in an environment where a lot of people have lost their jobs.
Soon get into
You would be aware that the government recently just gave UTech some more money in the supplementary estimate, because there has been a lot of students who have not been able to pay their fees, and a lot of lecturers who were running the risk of not being able to be paid. So the issues with the universities is very significant. UWE also has financial challenges because many students are not engaging or enrolling as they used to, or the payment period is longer than it used to be. And the other issue though is that I think everybody in the education sector need to recognize that we've been talking about a digital society for 10, 20 years. We've given it a lot of lip service.
A lot.
We had tablets in schools running from 20 years ago. When we went to the ministry, we saw a whole warehouse of tablets that were damaged. The time has come, and I think we are there for Jamaicans to take digital literacy and moving towards a digital society serious. If we do not do it, we're gonna have questions that was just raised about the distinction between remote and online learning. We should not be having that conversation
Not in
2021.
2021, no.
And what we realized at the beginning of the pandemic is that a lot of our educators were not digitally literate. So we had to spend a lot of money to train. But training and experience are two completely different things. If you've been doing something for 25 years and then somebody sends you to a 2-week or 6-week seminar to change everything that you've been doing for 25 years. So what has been happening, and we've seen a lot of innovation over the period where you've seen teachers who have been going out there doing Udemy courses and all of these things, seeking to get an advantage within the classroom, because online learning is going to be with us for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
The concept of education, both at the university level, the secondary level, and the primary level, is 24-hour access. That is what we're promoting. So the idea that you guys have brought forward are important ideas, and they contribute towards the need to evolve, not just the secondary and the primary, but also the tertiary, so that it's not just about going to IFLT lecture theater and get a lecture.
Not IFLT.
But access to, when I was doing the University of London, I could wake up at 2 a.m. and watch my lectures.
To school. Yes.
I got every single book that I need except the workbook was available online.
Free?
No, you pay one fee.
Remember, pay the fee.
You pay one fee, and you got a box delivered by FedEx to your house.
Yes.
With every single book that you need for that year.
Wow.
And then when you go on the library, they give you subscription access to the libraries across the world with all the papers. And it's not much more expensive than what we pay in Jamaica.
And that is an understanding that you can learn from anywhere. Because I feel like also, Minister, for some time we always, especially with like university and thing, we kind of connected like education and the learning thing with going to school. Like you have to go for UA. Now go for UA now.
But I would even say, Rush, that prior to us being, I would say, forced to be online, if you told someone you're doing an online degree, people would be like, online degree,
Let's check
kinda
that.
cute,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think even that is I think we have to change that kind of mentality.
But I'm glad. Oh, go ahead.
It has to do with, so, and we're speaking frankly here, and I think a lot of the times Jamaicans blame our institutions for the challenges, but there's always a 50% blame that has to be on the individual.
Absolutely.
Because the spoon feeding approach does not work anymore. And I think we have to have a cultural shift in our society, because a lot of persons in our society, they have poor health seeking behaviors. They don't want to take the vaccine, right? They're prone to rumor and conjecture and mythology.
And WhatsApp University.
And the lecturer does not send the notes. You don't call the lecturer. You don't turn up at the school door. You don't find him yard. Because the reality of it is that the people have to become motivated to seek out their personal development and interests. If you look at a lot of the persons who have come from nothing in our society, it was not just the ability that somebody pay them school fee, or somebody give them some book. It was just this drive, this desire to make their lives better. And one of the challenges I find, and I'm seeing with young people, especially in the Ministry of Youth, is that a lot of young people expect you to bring them the food, open their mouth, and put the spoon in their mouth and say, swallow. And that is not universal, but you're seeing a generation developing where people believe that when you become 18 and 19 and 20, that the government and the parents and people are gonna be babying you for the rest of your life. And that's not how the world how the world works. Like I saw some discussions on Twitter the other day where somebody just left university and they were wanted to earn $300,000 a month. And they were offended that somebody did not want to pay them $300,000 a month. When I left university in 2005, I was earning $27,000 a month. And every year I improved myself, and I applied for new jobs, In a market economy, the competition is not just about goods, it's also about people. And if you in Jamaica are not equipping yourself to compete on a global platform, somebody from the Philippines is going to take your job. So we have a responsibility, Rush, as a government, to create the framework and the platform and the facilities to give our people the best opportunity to improve themselves. But when you get the opportunity, you have to take it.
Young people, we heard from Minister Morgan, because there are two things that stood out to me. He said that we are always talking lip service. And funnily enough, the theme for this year starts with a decade of action, not a decade of talk, a decade of action. And also, we highlighted at the start that Jamaicans are resilient, we're smart, we're the greatest resource, right? But there's also a shift that has to happen culturally, because we are also the ones holding ourselves back. So we're propelling ourselves forward and we're holding ourselves back. No, I know everybody's like, but I want to hear from Daniel, I want to hear from Daniel, I want to hear from Cynthia. Daniel, I'm going to bring you into the conversation because your situation is very interesting, because when I was doing the research, right, said that basic school students and preschool students are highly affected. Tertiary students are highly affected, but the high schoolers, they are the most affected. And I think it's also because of that age, you're not young where your mother is like, I'm a little teen, and you're not old where your father is like, hey boy, go to school, whatever. You're right there in the middle. Doing CSEC in the middle of a Panera bread pandemic, people, come on. What was that like?
Oh gosh, how do I describe it? It was difficult. It was challenging. It was a lot to get myself accustomed to, considering I had never used the online modality. But personally, over time, it began to it became better. But that was only for me. I think you have to take into consideration the fact that also students at secondary level institutions saw school as their safe haven. It was a place they went to escape whatever home situation they had to endure. So it was the place that they could obtain all the knowledge. It was their escape. So I had the support. I had a good home situation in which I was able to, log into school on a in a timely manner. But that wasn't the same sentiment that was shared with the rest of my classmates. So it was easy for me, yes, because I had the support, I had the resources, and I had the discipline. But it was not the same for a lot of my classmates.
Because if you're able to set up like a nice Zoom background and you have a table and your mother go to, active and bad desk, and that is cute.
Exactly.
But how many people have that reality?
Exactly.
Exactly. Now, you're from the National Secondary Students Council.
Yes.
What have you heard from first formers? Because first formers now you're starting school in the pandemic online. You're making friends online, you're meeting the teachers online. There's no structure that you're accustomed to. What have you heard from them and how are they managing?
It's not good from what I've heard so far. It's as if they're a major part of their socialization has been taken away from them. Because in first form is when you kind of set the foundation for the rest of your years. In high school, you find your friends, you join clubs, you do all these fun things, and you dip your toes into high school. You just dip it a little bit.
Yeah.
But they've been deprived of that opportunity. So it's been difficult. So in the sense where, yes, some of them were able to catch up academically, the social aspect of it is really, it has been their downfall in regards to entering into high school during the pandemic.
So I noticed that the conversation for primary, basic school and high school is about the social aspect in addition to the learning,
Yes.
whereas tertiary it's more so about connecting and the learning. When you think about your high school experience so far, what's been the biggest plus? I'm gonna ask you, yes, because I want to kind of hear that before we go into the next part. What's been the biggest plus for online learning for you?
I've been able to see that I have the capacity to do a lot.
Ooh.
So in regards to, managing, being a student leader and extracurricular activities, I have the capacity to discipline myself and say, hey, you have class right now, so wake up at 7 o'clock, ensure that you're on the Zoom call. So that's been the experience for me in which I was able to hone my own discipline and hone my capabilities as a student, but that hasn't been the same for everyone.
Do you notice that the schools are becoming more creative with how they approach the learning experience? Or do you feel like we're just doing what we used to do, but now it's on Zoom?
They're doing what they used to do, but now it's on Zoom. With online learning, you have to
devotion and everything.
Every single thing.
I'm a promise.
I'm a possibility. Every single thing.
Swimming. Swimming. Wow. The same thing.
Same thing.
So what kind of conversations have you had with your school leadership that is not head boy, head girl, but principals and so on? And how has that response been before we take it to the ministry level?
It's mixed reactions from different institutions. So we're trying to get teacher-student collaboration and teacher-principal collaboration so that the students can implement whatever resources they're using on their own to enhance their learning experience in the classrooms rather than just continuing the same thing that we're doing at school, online, at home. So it's been some teachers and some principals have been receptive to it, and they're like, of course, we want the students to learn, but then others are like, this is our policy, this is our structure, and this is how we want to follow it. So it's been good, bad, black, white. But it's not leveled as yet.
Daniel, I don't mean to badger you, I just have so many questions. What about the disparity between? Because remember, you're national, so I just asked about St. Hughes. The disparity between the rural schools and the urban schools, right? Is there a conversation happening? And in the words of Oprah, who is having that conversation?
Well, as the National Secondary Students Council, we are having that conversation. You know, I can't speak for any other secondary level institution, but we see the need, we see the gap that has been created, the gap that has been widened, because the gap was there already, you know, prior to COVID. COVID only exacerbated, for lack of a better word, to that disparity that existed between the urban institutions and the rural institutions. So we are having that conversation, but I can't speak to any other organization.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm gonna bring in the minister because I heard about the tablets and I know that we're setting up the fiber optic cables and I know the broadband and all of that, but I kind of want to take it from a different angle. We heard Daniel talk about the issue socially, the social issues. I read and I know that we have had greater or more reports in terms of home domestic violence, we've had pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, so on and so forth. What avenues can someone take? Where can someone go if they are feeling as though the escape that they had in school is no longer there? That's part one of the question. And part two is, how does PATH operate now in this space where we're unable to give them the lunches at school and they're able to get the lunch money and How has that been?
All right, so the first question you ask is a very important question, and it relates to this connection, as I said to you before. So traditionally, the school has been a safe haven for many children. There are many teachers who are second mothers, second fathers. For a lot of children who are neglected, abused, don't have lunch, etc. I am one of those children who used to get lunch from a vice principal. Now, because of the disconnection, we saw a dip in reports of child abuse. But that doesn't mean that there was a reduction in child abuse. I would be very willing to bet that there was an increase. And that's what part of the reason why we pushed really hard to set up 211, which is a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline that anyone can call free of cost, confidentially, to report child abuse. Because over the pandemic period, we have seen some very disturbing incidents come to the fore. And some of them involve people who have a higher duty of care to protect children.
Very close, yes.
Pastors, teachers,
Caregivers.
caregivers.
Yes.
So we said, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work closer with the police to have a really strong approach to, if we hear about it, we're gonna get involved in it. The second approach is to increase self-reporting, meaning get more children to report that they're being abused. So you can just take up a cell phone and dial 211 rather. Even a 3-year-old can dial 211. But there's a bigger, other than all we're doing in terms of empowering young people to know that they can get help, and there's a suicide prevention hotline. The Children's Advocate also has a hotline, safe spot that you can call and get counseling. We have also been working with guidance counselors to try to reach out more to students that they know have challenges. Teenage pregnancy is a big problem that has occurred in the pandemic.
Yes.
I know of schools that I have interacted to where so many of their fifth form cohort are now with child or had a child.
Wow.
And so we have to intervene both at the Child Care and Protection Family Services Agency in the lives of those persons. But we also have to still work with the school ecosystem, who would have the closest connection to the parents and the children to find out what is happening. So a big part of it is trying to get more social workers into the system who can go into communities. A big part of it is a suggestion that we've had where the psychologists that work with the Ministry of Education are now going to be working also with the Child Care and Protection Family Services Agency, because we have a chronic shortage of psychologists in Jamaica. But a lot of it also has to do with young persons who are in student leadership who recognize challenges with their friends and colleagues, not just wait to reach out for help on their behalf. A big part of what we have been trying to encourage in speaking about the mental issues that are occurring, in speaking about the social disconnection, is about young people helping young people. So part of the 211 campaign is engaging with youth clubs so that they too can look within their communities and push forward initiatives. I don't know if you were in the youth parliament before, but one of the things that we do every year in the youth parliament is each young person who is a young parliamentarian has to have a project. In my constituency, the young person is doing a project on period poverty because it's a very hidden problem, but it's such a big problem.
Oh, yes.
Where a lot of young women have challenges getting access
yes.
to these essential items.
And they would have through school.
And if they were in school,
yes.
they could go to the guidance counselor
yes.
or could go to the teacher. So the disconnection, as you have said, and you have to understand.
So layered.
On one side,
very layered.
On one side, you have to say to the principals and the teachers, boy, you need to evolve. But on the other side, you have to recognize that they are having the same challenges that we are having.
Listen, COVID broke. COVID, you know, when you wear a pants and the pants are a little tight and the seams just got, that was COVID. Everybody. So it's almost like, and I wanted to say to those who are watching, remember to send in your questions, of course, but the minister is very honest with this part of the conversation that we're trying to figure it out as we go. You know, like no one planned and said, hey guys, you know, we're gonna have a pandemic in 2 years and here's what we're gonna do. No, we're trying to figure it out and it will take a group effort. And that means that all the stakeholders, the ministry, the National Students Council, JUTS, can I call it JUTS?
Yes.
JUTS. Yeah, JUTS, that everybody says something, speaks up, and sort of also we need to build this community that we're having here. Being your brother's keeper, looking out for your friend. How many of you see somebody in your class and you say, feel like someone off with Mary Jane, you know, I used to tutor at UA, for example, right. And one of my students, yeah, I knew as fact that she was going through it. I knew. She used to just, she was like screaming out in the class, like, and sending WhatsApp messages in the groups that were just very odd, you know? And I was like, no, something is off. And we've said something and something has happened. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So because for the YCC, while we do talk about issues, one of the big parts of the conference is that we celebrate as well what young people are doing. And Minister talked about that collaborative effort between administration, student leaders, etc. I just wanted to quickly highlight some things that young people are doing, even outside of NSSC and JUTS. But starting off with JUTS and what we'd have done with the ministry, when we would have had the school closures initially in 2020, March 2020, not to brag or anything, but I would have actually at the minister at the time, and I would have said, what are we going to do in terms of online learning now that students are at home? And would have come up with the idea collaboratively to have 0 rating of online tertiary institutions, and it was broadened to facilitate other educational institutions. Currently, we have over 100 educational institutions that have been their websites would have been 0 rated. I think that has to be commended in a platform such as this.
Put hands up in the chat and applause in the chat. Let's see it in the chat. I'm clapping. Very good. Excellent.
And then we talk about would have mobilized having, as you talked about, you know, being able to be your brother's keeper, your sister's keeper, mobilize peer mentors, both with the NSSC in the past membership executive, and with JUTS as well. But at this time, because I'm very big on accountability, the Minister Tufton at the time, he would have had a town hall with a number of young people earlier this year, and we would have formed this group. We called ourselves the Reach Out Rangers, because it was our plan that we'd work with all the different ministries collaboratively to advance young people's assistance as we fight COVID and the negative effects thereof. Minister, I'm saying to you, put us to work. I don't want to just be in that WhatsApp group and call myself a ranger. And as Minister here is saying, there are young people in schools who want to be supported. We want to be trained in peer counseling so we can identify. It's not very, it may seem sometimes, but it's easy to identify, but it's not. Because we have the Twitter culture now, people just tweet things to say, oh, I feel like I want to off myself, and it's just a joke. But how do you, are you able to really identify that a young person needs help? That needs some kind of capacity building.
Yes.
And so Minister Tufton, Minister Morgan, put the young people to work, but we need that support because we are brimming at the seams with ideas to help. We don't just want to say, Minister, do this, at least not for Christina, President of JUTS. I have always been very solutions oriented and I've always wanted to help, but I do need that capacity.
And I noticed what Daniel said at the start, and it's interesting that you are saying that out loud, because Daniel said, I know that I'm in a better position than many of my peers. Right. And so that is why I'm in a position to lead, and that's why I'm in a position to speak on their behalf. And so I can be trained, I can learn, and I can be my brother's keeper. Now, we have questions coming in, and I thought that we didn't have any questions. I was like, oh my God, nobody's watching. But we have several questions. We have a question from Instagram from Kyle Nunez, and it says, what is challenging? I cannot see, just a second. What is challenging about the current learning model that you would like to see improved? Okay, that's a great question. And I think that I want to hear from Daniel. And I also want to hear from the minister. And then let's see.
I think it lacks equity and inclusivity for a lot of students. It doesn't necessarily take into consideration different learning types. And I've heard the term that, there's only one learning type. That's a myth. There are various learning types. I remember reading an article by the United Nations that said that around 15% of our population has a disability. So that would be between 42,000 to 64,000 of students at the secondary level in Jamaica. So it lacks the inclusivity in which it takes into consideration students that may have learning disabilities or physical disabilities that may hinder them from effectively and adequately taking in information. At the same time, it is very achievement oriented. So in which you have the 90+ average, and it's like, great, you understand, let's move on. Yeah. Whereas a student with a low average that may not be the standard for the institution may be set back, and it doesn't see that a student's capacity is not just reflected in their test results. Sorry, my stutter. It only uses that.
Never, no apologies. Beautifully expressed. You're articulate, you're smart, you're bright, and you're doing a great job. Just want to let you know that. But I have a follow-up question for you. Do you notice that, or better yet, let me not ask if you notice, but can you assist me with this information? I know that when I was in high school, for example, if you did not meet a certain threshold or requirement, you would have to repeat the year. Are we doing that still, or do you know even, or everybody just going forward? Fourth form to fifth form.
We're still doing that, and I think that's because we lack empathy and compassion for the students. We need to acknowledge their socioeconomic challenges that they may experience that may hinder them. No, it really isn't. It can be as a result of poor mental health or things going on at home. We need to address the situations going on with our students so that they can move ahead, because a lot of times that is what is holding them back.
Excellent. Minister, what is challenging about the current learning model?
I agree with the NSSC. There is an issue of equity, but the issue of equity is not as black and white as people perceive it to be. So you have traditional high schools, you have non-traditional high schools. You have rural high schools, you have urban high schools. You have inner city schools, you have uptown
That's a lot of layers,
So when we say equity, so the schools mirror the socioeconomic threads that exist within the society.
Yes.
So let's look at a campion.
Yes.
So a campion evolved out of a rich tradition of the Catholic Jesuits, who established the school and established the structure of it. The type of education gave them the ability to attract students who excelled at a particular level.
Yes.
Those same students became titans in industry, bright people, became very wealthy.
And then poured
And
back
then
into
poured
the
back money
school.
into the school.
Yep.
So a school
Generational.
like Agavarmasio, where I was from, which started in 1981, is a young school.
Oh, yeah.
It would not have been able to attract the same traditional type of people.
And investment.
So
Yes.
what needs to happen, and we've been doing a lot of work on it at the ministry, is you will not have equity of outcome, but you must have equity of opportunity.
Ooh, let me write that
Right.
down. Say it again, Minister, please.
So I'm saying you will never have equity of outcome, but you must have equity in opportunity, right? And the governments over time have tried, they have brought in PATH, they have brought in the school feeding program, they have brought in the book rental scheme, they have standardized the curriculum so students are not forced to buy 1 million books. When I was
Hey,
at
book
Gavin,
listener.
my bag used to tear up
Heavy.
every time.
Hello.
No, but
At
see,
a John Sport. Okay.
so the point is that in order to fix the education system, you have to fix the society. So so I am not going to be able as a government to give a school much more money if the Minister of Finance doesn't give us the money, or if the economy doesn't grow. So there are schools in my constituency that do not have running water. And it's not because the ministry does not care,
Yeah.
but the community doesn't have running water.
Wow.
80% of Moko does not have a pipe for you to get running water through. So then logically, the schools in Moko
It's a
will not have a
reflection.
pipe to get.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
So you have to appreciate that the whole issue of equity is not just underpinned by somebody's economic circumstances. It is a sociological issue, it's a psychosocial issue, it's cultural. So our approach at the ministry is, so for example, with the broadband initiative, we figure out that if we can get every school in Jamaica, public school, access to good quality internet, then we can start serving directly to students standard education material suited for their type of education.
Yes.
So think about it. One of the ideas we have is, let's say Arden has the best math teacher in Jamaica. Think about that teacher broadcasting his math class to Norman Manley High School, to Clarendon College, to Lennon, while the teacher in Lennon is there also acting as a tutor.
Excellent.
So the master teacher is now able to expand his reach to a wider audience. So you can have a section that is a lecture section, and then you have a section that is a tutorial where people ask questions. That's one idea that we have come up with. And that's what being digital and having a digital outlook can democratize and create equity of access.
Level the playing field.
Campion was able to attract this master teacher because of its prestige and maybe a little bit more emoluments. But now this master teacher can use the facility that is at Campion to help a student at Lennon whose math teacher may not be at that level. So our approach is not to just tinker with the edges of the education system, but to see how best we can give every child in Jamaica an equitable access to the resources that they need to empower themselves and develop themselves. Find out what are the various learning types that exist in this child. Like one of the things that we're doing when we're going to repealing Section 24 of the Child Protection Act, which gives judges the discretion to just throw a child in a penal institution without charge. Because a lot of the times we recognize that when the parent goes to the police station to bring that child before the court, the problem is not the child.
Yep.
Because children run away for two reasons. They're either running away from something or they're running towards something.
Yep.
And what we're trying to do is say to the courts and say to the childcare professionals, you need to do a psychosocial assessment of every single child that interacts with the state, because you will never know what are the issues at home in the community or psychologically that are impacting that child's ability to learn, that child's attitude, or that child's behavior within the community, within the school, within their home. So psychological assessments of children to determine their learning patterns, whether they have mild autism, whether they have Asperger's, whether they have nothing. Creating an environment where parents understand the importance of education, and if they need help, there are avenues that they can get help. Also, trying to give the schools a standard resource capability where you know that if you go to this school, you have a good chance of coming out successful. And I think if we can do those things, how are the minds of our children working? What is the standard offer that a school must have? Internet, it must have water, it must have good infrastructure.
Yes.
In terms of bathrooms, in terms of the environment. It must have teachers who are qualified, which is why we are moving towards the licensing of teachers, where teaching is not just you go to university and you come out and you say, boy, I can't get a job. Never teach you for 4 years. No.
Between teaching
We
and
have a lot
nursing,
of teachers within the system who are doing an amazing job.
Yes.
And their job reputation is being diminished by some persons in the system who are just in it to make a money. Right? So a lot of persons were upset when the ministry said free summer school. And I won't finish that sentence. Right? So what we have to do, we have to build equity at access. We will not have equity at outcome because you cannot determine how a person's mind works. Maybe this person gonna grow up to become one of the best owners of a taxi company in Jamaica, and he probably never passed maths, but he's probably good with logistics, and he probably have a sharp mind as it relates to those things you don't know. But you have to give them the opportunity to be the best that they can be, whatever that is.
Opportunity. You heard it from Minister Morgan. You will never have equity in income. In outcome. In more income, is right, you know.
But that's also true.
No,
that's also
for true, but it's a good thing to go to school. See, you will never have equity in outcome, but you must have equity in opportunity. If you're just joining us, I mean, you missed a lot, but we're here at YCC 2021. We have with us Daniel, and I just on first name basis now because we're all familiar. We have Daniel from the National Secondary Students Council. We have Christina from JUTS, Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students.
Yes.
Yes, and we also have Minister Morgan, State Minister in the Ministry of Education and Information. Now we're just talking about teachers, and this is an interesting question. By the way, if you have any questions, use the hashtag YC21. Andrew Hines from Instagram has a question. He says, the minister just spoke about UTEC and UA well when he did. What about teacher training institutions and community colleges? I actually want to, before we hear from the minister, ask Christina, JUTS,
yes.
Are the community colleges and teacher training institutions a part of JUTS?
Yes.
And are you having dialogue with them?
Yes, we are.
What are they saying?
Okay, so we're having dialogue with our teacher training institutions, our community colleges, as well as our technical institutions. I just want to highlight that because we have BTDI, etc. And one of the things that we have decided already is that we are going to ensure that their priorities this particular academic year is big. Their priorities will be prioritized on the JUTS mandate. Big up on yourself, UA. I'm a student there. Big up on yourself, UTEC, but we have to assess the realities. The truth is, the student governance bodies at those institutions, they are usually well-funded because of the virtue of their structure, as well as they tend to have good capacity building. But for our community colleges, or teacher institutions, or our technical institutions, some of these student governance bodies don't even get funding for them to even be able to plan and execute ideas amongst themselves. So that's the first thing. And then there's also the matter of they feel like they're the red-headed stepchild in some regards, on some matters.
And in some ways, they are treated like that, let's be honest.
And so what I am trying to do is, before I even begin to point any fingers, I'm listening to all the different issues coming to us, creating that mandate, and then we're going to the ministry to say, this is what the students from these particular institutions are saying. But we also have to think about it in this way. When we begin to make the plans about how we're going to go into tertiary institutions, we cannot lock them into the UE and UTech institutions because their issues are very nuanced. So for example, at the CCJ level, and I actually sit on the board of the CCJ, when they want to do anything about changing of the curriculum, for example, it comes to that larger board. So while UE and UTech may have autonomy at their level, where they meet internally and they will say, okay, we want to make this change in the best interest of students, and it may happen quicker because it's right within the institution. At the CCJ level, they have to go to this overarching board that manages all the different community colleges. So that already delays that process. So if we're talking about the first question that you looked at, how we're going to improve the learning model in these institutions, we know already that for a CCJ type of environment, we have to think about how could we make it faster because it's a different structure. So the issues are nuanced at that level. And so at the ministry level, it cannot be that the tertiary unit, because we have a tertiary unit at the ministry, will just broad brush and say, this is how we're addressing the issues right across the board for all these tertiary institutions. It has to be specific.
And luckily, there is a group like JUTS with representation for all different tertiary institutions, and you are the person with a seat at the table.
Yes, and as Sir said, we come to the table, eat food.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm trying my best to bring others with me to that table.
Ooh.
I don't just want to be that one person. And the reason why, I'm quite aware of my personal bias. I have to constantly be unlearning and relearning as president of JUTS because I'm coming from a UE context. So even when I'm dealing with community colleges issues and teacher institutions, I listen more than I talk because I am not fully aware of. And so to my student leaders from these institutions, they're listening right now, ChristinaWilliams.s on Instagram, reach out to me, keep me accountable. Because while I am keeping Minister Morgan accountable, I want you to also drill me as well so I can keep up the standard and help keep the ministry standard as well.
Amazing. Guys, we're on the last lap. You know when you run relay, who did run the last lap in the 4x1 for the women's? Was it Shelly? No, Sharika, right?
Last lap?
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Terry.
Oh, okay.
We're now on the Sharika leg, the final. We Sharika have it and we run into the finish line. So, Minister, training institutions, teacher training institutions and community colleges.
So I listened to Christina's comments, and I agree with her to an extent that yes, UE and UTech do have autonomy in terms of their management, but those institutions are governed by a different type of legislation than community colleges and teachers' colleges. So, for example, UE comes out of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, and it has specific rules that the government, in many cases, is not empowered to interfere in. Right? Yes, we do give them a lot of funding, and yes, we do have meetings, and we do have a consultative process that includes several other members of the CARICOM. UTech also has its own legislation. It also has its board that was crafted to govern UTech. There are a lot of challenges there. The ministry is working with them to make it a more student-friendly, make it a more focused institution as to what its mandate should be. As it relates to community colleges and teacher training institutions, our approach at the Ministry of Education is always consultative. It's not dictatorial. So we have JUTS, we have Youth Advisory Council, we have National Secondary Students Council, we have the guilds of students, we have students within these institutions, we have lecturers within these institutions, we have the heads of these institutions. So whenever you're making a decision as it relates to education institutions, while my view may be X, there's a whole potpourri of different views that exist out there. There's one set of persons in the institutions who say we need greater autonomy. But then there's another set of persons in the institutions saying you should not have so much autonomy. The government needs to maintain control. And you are going to find that both sides of the conversation have reasonable justifications as to why they are right. And usually the compromise is going to be found in the middle. So we are in a mode of reform at the ministry. We're looking at UE, we're looking at UTech, we're looking at the community colleges, and we're saying, how can we evolve these institutions to fit into the mode of what a new Jamaica should be? And that those conversations continue. The minister meets with them all the time. Consistent meetings with UE and UTech. I'm sure you're going to see changes at UTech this year based on the meetings that we've had with them and the collaboration that we've had with them. Because a lot of the times, at a meeting with UTech, and I call a lot of the student leaders and I said to them, give me 2 good things and 2 bad things about UTech. And they gave me the good and they gave me the bad. And I went into the meeting, and interestingly, the articulation of the challenges, sometimes the administrators do not know the fullness of it.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times, there's a Chinese telephone between fellowship and student leadership.
Yes.
Right? Where the student leadership has a particular prism through which they view things.
That's true.
And this fellowship has a particular prism. Right? And it happened to me when I was on campus and I was working with Damien, who was president of the guild at the time, where students on Taylor Hall and Chancellor Hall and Preston had one view as to how things on campus must go. But then when you go over to commuting students, it's a totally different thing. So what we have to do is, as I said, get as many people at the table as possible. And as leaders, spend more time listening than talking. Listening to what the concerns of the students are. And the students at the community college have a lot of concerns about their terms of engagement, about fees, about is their voice being heard by leadership. And I think JUTS is pride of place to be a strong advocate. Because in many cases, I like when people come to me and cuss and send me a letter, because it gives me an opportunity now to say, guys, I got a letter. Look, yes, this is a problem. So I say to people all the time, write me, call me, tell me your concerns, because in many cases, I am not connected to every single vein that exists within the system. And I can go to my minister, go to my peers, and I will say to you, and I don't know if anybody can challenge it, that Favour Williams is probably one of the most open ministers that we have had in the education
Christina
system.
says yes.
Yes.
Right. So
she appointed me to the board, so I know.
Right.
Yes.
On whose recommendation? So we maintain an open door policy, and I know you only have 10 minutes left, so let me stop it right there.
Thank you. More time. We need to do listening, Dan, more listening than talking. I have a very tongue-in-cheek, very casual question to ask. Did you have a graduation ball this year?
Not a ball, no.
Oh,
we had
what did you do?
A small ceremony.
Class
so it was like the valedictory service. So only those who were speaking came, and then the rest of the students watched via YouTube.
Oh, I hope that we get out of this thing in 2 years and you can keep a little class party, don't it? Yeah. We have questions coming in from Zoom as well. This is a very good question for the minister from Donette Wright. What is the level or extent of penetration of the RTR initiative? So
the initiative has not started yet. It was announced probably about a week and a half ago. The idea is to engage young people, particularly through the youth division. So we're going to call on JUTS, we're going to call on NSSC, we're going to call on Youth Advisory Council, we're going to call on all our entities. We have thousands of young people who are connected. And as you say, put you to work. So we're going to put you to work. And what they're going to do is they're going to go in the communities that we're seeing the largest disconnection.
Right.
So for example, in the area of Moko, one at my high school in Moko, is seen an average of 30 to 40% attendance.
Wow.
Right. So we now have to go into those communities, to go to every single yard. The minister came up with the name, to go to every single yard to find out, is it a tablet? Is it that the child is now an employee of a company somewhere outside?
Yeah.
Is it that the child is pregnant? Is it that the child has migrated? Is it that the parent cannot afford the tablet or whatever? So that's what we're gonna do. And it is important because it will give us not just a base data for this particular situation, but invariably, the wealthy parents' kids are in school.
Oh, yes.
They are online, they are going to their school, they
have a
all
whole
of that.
room for class.
The people who are suffering the most from the COVID and the disconnection it costs are the ones who have always been suffering in the education sector. Don't have uniform, don't have the auxiliary fee, don't have the book list and all of those things. So what this is gonna give us now is give us a base data point so we can connect with these children and follow them over time.
Yes.
To intervene in their lives in particular ways to ensure that they can have more equity and access to probably rescue their education in the system. So that's the plan.
Excellent. So we're looking forward to the launch of the Yard to Yard. I'll be there. Christina, will you be there?
Yes.
Daniel, will you be there?
Maybe not.
On our island. No, we're senior questions, guys, and thank you so much for being here and participating. If you want to continue the conversation, you can definitely join us in one of our breakout sessions after the break, but we do not have much time left. And so I am going to throw it out there. I want to hear a final thought. You know, we have students watching from all across Jamaica, young people. What do we want to leave them with? We got many nuggets and gems. We got some from Christina, got from Daniel, definitely got from the minister. I'm going to start with you, Christina. For those who are watching, what do you have to say? It's the I Believe initiative. We want to kind of bridge the gap, want to be resilient towards this future that we're building for our youth. What do you have to say to them?
Just as the title right there says, for I believe in you, my fellow young people. We have highlighted many different issues affecting us in the education sector, but while it is that we complain and we highlight these issues, I also want to say that there is promise. We are you know that song we like to sing, a promise and a potentiality.
Oh, yeah.
You are a promise to Jamaica. You are full of potential. And I know you may feel disconnected, disengaged, so many issues, but I'm asking you to push forward. There's nothing wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed once we're at Jamaica. There's nothing wrong with young people that cannot be fixed by what is right with young people and stakeholders who support young people. So I am here as one of the many youth leaders in Jamaica, always here to support you and be that voice at the table, but also to give you opportunities to be at that table as well. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us speak. And I look forward to all the great things that you will accomplish as a young person in Jamaica.
Christina says, put us to work. I believe we have so much promise and potential. I'm going to give the last word to Daniel. So Daniel, prepare now. Oh, okay, you're a promise. Yes. Okay. Minister Morgan, what do you want to say to the young people watching? We want to be inspired. We thank you for your honesty, by the way. We really appreciate it. And this sort of consult that we're having is so important. What do you have to say to them?
Well, I know that Jamaica's best days are ahead of it. And the platform on which our best days will be built is with the young people of Jamaica. Young people are resilient. Many of them are very motivated. Many of them have a lot of wisdom and knowledge of the modern world and what Jamaica needs to do to evolve to a place where every young person can be proud and the older generation can look back with pride at what we have done. While we have enumerated many challenges and many solutions, I want to say to everyone who is watching that one of the most important things that is true, even in the midst of the greatest challenge Jamaica has faced since its independence, is that hope continues to spring forth. And we see blooms of new developments taking place, which give us an insight that things are getting better. So I'm asking the young people to not lose faith, Do not be discouraged to recognize that your strength, your energy, your wisdom, your motivation is what is going to take Jamaica where we all need it to be. I believe that young people can inspire Jamaica to be the best it can be. And we're here to help.
Amen. I feel like I'm at church. I almost say hallelujah. Thank you, Minister Morgan, and your presence here and the way in which you've interacted with us shows it's a testament, to the fact that you do care and you're here for service and for to sort of facilitate the conversations that we're having. Many ministers would not show up or come read a little speech and go away. And you're here, you're having conversations, you're honest, and we do appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing the Yard to Yard initiative come to light and the many other plans that the ministry has. Daniel.
As of right now, our education is in our hands. Young people, it's in your hands. Whoever's watching this right now, it is in your hands. You have the capacity to hold that education, hold on to that education. You have the capacity to do so much. I'm a youth leader. Everyone right now sitting down at home watching this who is a youth, you are a youth leader. You have the capacity to speak out, be an advocate for your classmates. If you see someone that doesn't have it, help them. Sharing is caring. As simple as the saying is, sharing is caring. So care for your classmates, care for everyone, do what you can, hone your discipline, be an advocate, as said before, and I believe that we can together. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, amazing. I believe, yes, amen. I believe for those who are just tuning in and for those who have been here, you are watching a very, very important moment. This is the, I believe, YCC Conference 2021. And we spoke about several different things. And before we wrap up, I just want to sort of put them together for us. The panel have a buzz, right? And we highlighted the fact that it's important for you to have a seat at the table. Christina said that. Christina highlighted the difference between remote and online learning. Daniel, our representative from NSSC, said that, we need to recognize that students are not only suffering with their education, but also the social aspect of it. Our minister highlighted that we need not just equity in outcome. No, you see, I mix it up. Say people, when you're quoting people, you must say exactly what them say. So let me read it. You will never have equity in outcome, but you must always have equity in opportunity. You see? Get it right. Also, we recognize that the education system is a direct reflection of the social structure of Jamaica. The schools that are doing X, it's because the community is doing X. And also, we want to spend more time listening and engaging and not just talking, because we want to hear what the students have to say. The best days are yet to come. I believe we've not given up on our students, we've not given up on our young people, and that is why we're here today. And so we thank you so much for joining. We have so much left in store for you. We also have part 2 tomorrow. And for those of you who are watching, we have something special coming. We recognize and mention that UN is one of our partners at the YCC along with the GGPE. And so we are going to see a video from the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining, guys. I'm Rushcam, and have a great rest of the day.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Blair Stewart. I'm a farmer on the PJ Agro Park in St. Thomas. I am a cassava planter. I have seasonal crop of onion, Irish potato, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin.
Since the onset of COVID-19, many female farmers like Charmaine have limited or no access to their usual markets. Many have lost produce valued at thousands of dollars needed to support their families.
The challenge I face mostly is lack of storage facility. I harvested 23,000 pounds of Irish potato, And of that 23,000 pounds, I sold 3,131 pounds. Other farmers across the country need to market their produce. The produce suffered.
Through the purchase of locally grown produce, the project will create a secure market for rural female farmers while meeting the food and nutrition demands of vulnerable families. These families will receive food care packages that will include locally grown fruits and vegetables. By supporting local supply chains, we are supporting livelihoods, reducing food and nutrition insecurity, and enhancing Jamaica's agricultural response and recovery to COVID-19.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Blair Stewart. I'm a farmer on the PJ Agro Park in St. Thomas.